Hello and welcome to another Modern Mind Ancient Book where we are going back to move forward. We're finding a love for the law, the prophets, and the writings. Tonight is the very first Exodus. It's week 1 of Exodus. We're doing 4 weeks per book. We're attempting to go through every single book in the Protestant Bible from the oldest to the newest, and we're doing it in chronological order. So tonight is going to be Exodus chapters 1 through chapters 15. This is kind of a pinnacle moment for Israel, and it's odd actually what's about to happen, because when you go through, say, Job to Genesis, it is approximately 3,000 years of history in those 2 books. And it's mind-boggling to wrap your mind around that, because like those 2 books, they really take a tremendous amount of study. We could have spent 10 years just on those 2 books, but we can't do that. So what we're doing is we're getting the gist of the stories, and we're focusing on the most important parts, the motifs in the stories themselves, so that we can begin to understand how the biblical narrative forms and pulls itself all the way through every prophet. So in the Bible, there's Torah or law, then there's Nav'im, which is prophets, and Chitubim, the writings. And so there's 3 separate portions in what we call the Old Testament, but I just call the Testament that speaks to Jesus, and then when Jesus arrives, the Brit Chadashah, the New Covenant, right? So, and in the New Covenant, it has its own breakouts. It's got epistles and synoptic gospels and things, which we'll talk about when we get to that point. But here, we're still in what is called the Torah, or the law. And if you've noticed, as we've went through Genesis, there actually hasn't been a Moses or a law yet, but we're going to meet him in this today. So this is kind of the pinnacle moment for Israel, when Israel became the nation that we know today, and that became the nation that was under law, and that had, and so this is one of those books too where dispensational theology comes from, because you had the dispensation or the breakout or the covenant framework of Israel. So you have covenant theologians, dispensationalists, and they all take like this book and then they start like breaking it apart. I refuse to do that. There is no different dispensation. God has been active and working in the world from creation until today, and it's the very same God. And he's taught the very same things. There's nothing different about it in my mind. Now, does that mean it's the exact same information? No, because people are different. Times are different. I have an iPhone in my pocket that gives me the entire world of information that these people just simply didn't have. And not only that, we have so much creature comfort. These people didn't have to be taught how to butcher animals because they butchered animals every day. Well, if you were wealthy, right? But you had to work in thorns and thistles. But today, we undo the curse with technology. And that's what you see more and more is up with man and down with obedience in this thing. So let's get started with Exodus. We're going to do 1 through 15 today, and it breaks out into 4 separate sections. You have the oppression of Israel, You have the preparation and commissioning of Moses as a leader. You have deliverance by 10 plagues and redemption by God's Passover, the Pesach, the lamb that was slain, enters new information. God has continuously put his hand into the world and showed us what his character is truly like. God is not the big men of old. He is not the Nephilim. He is not the rulers. He is not the mighty. He's the one who is willing to die and who is willing to avenge evil, but only after the proper time. We're going to see that Pharaoh, the God-man, the Nephilim, if you will, gets a lot of chances. A lot of chances. It's a story of grace, but then eventually judgment. In the end, God hardens his heart. People have a problem with that, but I don't. Because I know what sin does. Just in my short lifespan, I've seen it. I've seen a lot of people pay that price. But I also, by being a student of history, know that when sin takes hold, or these wicked people, when they abuse power, it bleeds into the future. And those people become worse and worse. God has a vested interest in the future. So he has to put his hand in at times and correct the way to keep life flourishing, which was everything that the flood was about. And we're going to see a recreation in this book. We started the recreation in the last book. In the covenant of parts, Abraham was told, your people will go into a land not their own, and they will be oppressed for 400 years. 400 years has passed. Now we're in Exodus. The name of this book is Ve'ele Shemot, and it means, and these are the names. Because on the very first page, now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came out of Egypt. And it lists the 12 tribes. But it also makes special note that Joseph was already there. Why? Because Joseph is very, very important. And what happened? Jacob died and he was taken. But Joseph died and he stayed in the Gentile lands. There's some motifs that keep happening over and over and over again in this. And that is one of them. Now we have the people in a land not their own, the Egyptians. And who are the Egyptians? They are the sons of Ham. They are the people that came off of the boat in the mountains. Now, Noah stayed up there for fear. His sons, Shem, came down to Shinar, or Sumer. They were Sumerian people. Japheth went north and east, and he became a Fergus. Then Ham went south and west, and he became the African nation, the African people, including the Egyptians. Again, a story of grace. Were these people righteous with the God-man? No. But it's not the only time that God has sent an emissary to them. He also sent them Abraham, right? Abraham went, and Isaac went, not Jacob. Jacob went back to Shinar, where he had to suffer through his problems. And now his sons have been sent. And they've been sent in a very difficult way, where they sold Joseph to the Gentiles and then eventually had to come down themselves because God was blessing Joseph, no longer Israel. That's something. There's always a righteous line who has God's blessing. Go to, we're already on the next slide here. So the theme is God rescues his people from bondage, displaying his supremacy over Pharaoh, and the Egyptian gods and oppressive powers. It's about covenant faithfulness. God remembers his covenant. Remember, that covenant with Abraham was made by God, not by Abraham or his descendants. Go to the next slide. In this, we have the name of God revealed, right? The Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Yahweh. You have the Passover instituted as a perpetual remembrance. Passover is forever to be celebrated. And anybody can celebrate it if they're circumcised, which we'll read. Then they become like one of the people. So is Israel exclusive? Not a chance. There were Egyptians that came out too. Israel is inclusive. They are the people of faith who wrestle with God. And if we love his word and do it, we can too be part of that history. Those are our people. Then you have the Exodus, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is central to Jewish identity. This is a moment that is forever and ever understood as a very important part of what it is to become the nation of Israel. Then the king of Egypt. Okay, so let's skip right here to chapter 1 in verse 8. It says, "Now a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph." This is real. This is a very real statement. There was a Pharaoh that arose, and his name was Thutmose I. And he didn't know Joseph. And you know what the problem was? The Egyptian people had become very nationalistic. They had been through wars. There had been problems. And their people were now threatened by a group of people who exist in their land who are not like them. They take care of animals. They value different things. If there's one thing you can say about Israel, which has always been true, they do not integrate. They refuse, will not do it. They have their own ways. And this has been from the beginning. The people of Shinar, of Sumer, these are the people that have produced the Assyrians, the Babylonians. These are the people that produced the conquering powers of the ancient world. They're not people who are subdued, who change. They're not people who come under the rule. They're the people who rule and keep their culture. It's just Shem was a stubborn guy, and it followed through his people. All of his people were that way. They're still that way. The Hebrews are from Shem. And here they are today, a stubborn people who went back to a land and called it theirs again and kept their own individualized ways, even though they were all over the world for a very long time. But they didn't change. They kept Passover. They kept Exodus. Because these books, the God who wrote these books, this is the way that they are named. In whose name are you known? It's all the way through this. And Israel, believe it or not, in her unfaithfulness, but only for today, she is the image of what it is to never let go and to never be let go. The time of the Gentiles, as Jesus said, is coming to an end eventually. Our history will never be this amazing because at some point we're going to turn away. It says there's a great falling away that's coming. But Israel, even though she has turned away, still has a memory. They still have the traditions. They still love the Lord their God. Maybe not with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength at this point, but there are some. There are some who are called by the name of the King, who have recognized him, who have seen in these very scriptures that Jesus is the one, that he is the suffering servant, the Joseph that was to be, and the Judah who is to come. So there was a king, Thutmose I. We know who he is. And he didn't know him. And so he said, come, let us deal wisely with them, or they will multiply, and in the event of war, they will also join our enemies and make themselves who hate us and fight against us and depart from the land. So they appointed taskmasters over them and to afflict them, and they gave them hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and the more they spread out. When God is with you, doesn't matter. We've learned this already. Joseph was given over, put into a place of servitude, he rose to the top. He was put in prison, he rose to the top. He was never to get out of prison. You know, he should have been murdered for trying to sleep with his wife, right? But he wasn't, because God was with him. Rose to the top. Then one day Pharaoh has a dream. He rises to the top. Now he's second in command. The only person who is greater than him is Pharaoh. And he, the anointed one of Israel, ruled over over Gentile people to redeem and save. This is a moment, too, for Egypt. Egypt is also going to be saved, at least a remnant of them, from the calamity that's coming because of evil reign. So the Egyptians compelled the sons of Israel to labor rigorously, and they made their lives bitter and hard. Then the king of Egypt spoke to two midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, and he said, when you're helping the Hebrew women to give birth, set them, and they're on the birth stool. If it's a son, you shall put him to death. But if it's a daughter, you shall let him live. But the midwives feared God, the faithful. There's a faithful remnant always available. Were these sons of Shem? No. They were daughters of Ham. These were not people that knew this history. But because they saw the workings of God, they changed and they became part of the people and they refused to do evil. This book does not teach us that this is old and we're not part of it. This book teaches us that God, when he moves, he brings everybody who's his, regardless of if they're children of Abraham by flesh or not. Because it's the children who believe. The midwife said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are vigorous, they have children before we can get there. Did they lie? Probably, right? They probably lied. So you shall not lie. Are they breaking a commandment? Yes. But did they break a commandment to preserve life? Yes. So is the law rock stone hard? No, it never has been. It's wisdom. The law is wisdom. Is it good to lie to a righteous, kind person about some issue that you don't have to lie about? May it never be. Is it good to lie when somebody says murder an innocent child? May it never be. One thing is not equal to the other. That's why the law is wisdom. It leads us to the place that is pleasing to God, where when we defy and deny men evil, then we're doing righteousness, even if you have to lie to Pharaoh. God's wisdom. A man of the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. What does that tell you? These are faithful people. They're honoring the desires of Avram. They're honoring the fact that this tribe, Levi, is going to have a chunk and a piece of. This is all forward looking. These tribes. Now, what was Levi's promise? Levi's promise was, your anger is great and it caused you to sin. Therefore, you will be among your people. They would have no land, right? And that's exactly what happened. And we're gonna see when they go take the land, but that's exactly what happened. But these are people who know that among their people is a people that will raise up the children to be like their people. That's why you hear pastors say a lot. Now, I don't know if they know it's this deep, but you want to marry somebody who has a like faith, right? You don't want to go outside of your people, because inside is where it's safe. This is where you don't have to worry that your kids are going to be exposed to things and forced into another world by evil ideas and misunderstandings about God. Because when God is taught in the house, the children get to live the life of righteousness. When God is taught outside of the house by somebody else, they're not taught God. Because this is a people that are ignorant of these doctrines, of this Bible. Because who spends their time doing this? We don't. We should. This is the greatest document to ever exist in human existence. And these documents are royal documents that we have the privilege and blessing to look into. So Moses is born, and he's born in the right way. And a couple months in, about 3 months in, they couldn't hide him any longer. So they grab a wicker basket, and they cover it in tar and pitch. What was the ark covered in? Tar and pitch, right? And he was put into the waters. And what was put into the waters? The ark. And then he was taken out of the waters, and he was to live. What was taken out of the waters? The ark. This is the recreation of humankind. This is God's promise to never destroy again by water. Instead, he's taking out a man to make that man the leader that brings the law, which is going to change the world. So here he is, Moses. You know what was also happening around this time with Thutmose I? There was a prophecy. The Egyptians had mages, sages, and magicians. And they learned to look up at the stars from Abraham. And they had an intuition. And that intuition was that Israel would have a Messiah soon who would rise up and lead them to victory. That's why this king said that, because his sages were telling him that. Now, this is the very one who's going to do it, but God delivered him. They wanted the babies, all the male babies, to be thrown into the river. How many times have we read in the Bible that the males were to be destroyed? This is the first time in the book now, but it's not the last time it's going to happen. And why? The seed war. Goes right back to Genesis. Hers will crush your head. This is the seed war. What is the Nile River? It's the power of Ra, of their God. The river is the place where the sacrifice happens. You put the baby in the water because that's where our sustenance comes from. That's the sweet water that gives life. When it overflows the Nile's banks and it brings new life out from the ground, abundance of crops, while everybody else was suffering from famine, Egypt never had that problem, most of the time anyway, because they had a river that gave life. But the river became a god on its own. And the babies were being fed to the god. And what for? For a bright future. Sounds a little bit like abortion. There's nothing new under the sun. Okay, recreation. Ark thing happens, right? Moses gets put into the water. But the daughter of Pharaoh would come down, and she would bathe in the Nile with her maidens walking alongside the Nile. And she saw the basket of reeds and sent her maids, and she brought it to her. When she opened it, she saw a child, and she saw the boy was crying, and she had pity on him, and she said, "This is one of the Hebrew kids." You know who that woman was? She's a real woman. Her name is Hatshepsut. We know that she's a real woman. You know how we know? Because the Pharaoh Amenhotep II, who was the Exodus Pharaoh, he tried to erase her name from history because she made the prophecy come true by saving Moses. We might actually know his name. It's Simenhut, Simenmut, something like that. That might be actually Moses' name, Simenmut, something like that. So she said to the sister said to Pharaoh, "Shall I go and get a nurse?" And they had it. God set this whole thing up. Mama got to come back and take care of the baby. Yeah, amazing. So go ahead and get her. The child grew, and it was good. Now it came about in those days when Moses had grown up, and he went out to his brother and looked on their labor and saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brothers. Okay? Let's back up a little bit, because this skips about 38 years, roughly. 39 years, okay? So there's something that happened. Pharaoh didn't have an heir, because Thutmose the first had Thutmose the second. Thutmose the second married Hatshepsut, which was his sister. They couldn't have children. This is the Abrahamic problem, right? But God wasn't with them. But you know where God was? He was with Abraham's descendants. So he was recreating the world by bringing a Hebrew into the mix. So Moses was supposed to be the heir of Egypt. Isn't that crazy? Moses was supposed to be the heir of Egypt. Not only that, there's a story found in the Jewish, Josephus Flavius, the Jewish story. I forget what it's called right now. But here's the thing. Moses was a general, okay? So the Ethiopians invaded Egypt. When they invaded Egypt, they were strong fighters. But they were also protected because their village capital was surrounded by rivers with walls. And it was hard to get there. There was only one way to get there because there was only solid ground on one side of the river. And then once you were down there, you had to then cross over to the river, which you would be killed on your way in. But Moses had a plan. And he became the serpent crusher. They made baskets. They put these birds called ibis in there. And they walked through the swamps. And when serpents would come out, the ibis would attack and kill them. Because that's what ibis do. The birds of the air are God's servants. The serpents are those to be crushed. The seed war. So how does he overcome evil? With the birds of the air, God's servants. And he crushes the serpents. And he conquers the Ethiopians because he came in the back way, caught them unaware. They made a deal. They had a ritual marriage. And then the Ethiopians and the Egyptians were solid. They were fine because Moses was married to one of the princesses. That's how the story goes. So Moses comes back a war hero. Now he's out. He sees that his people are under oppression, and he kills an Egyptian. Uh-oh. Not good, right? But here's what happens. His brothers rejected him. They said, well, what, are you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian? When it was time for Moses to fulfill the prophecy, his brothers rejected him and sold him to the Midianite people, just like Joseph. It's the same story. So he flees because Pharaoh's going to kill him. So he goes to Midian. He finds a group of women who are being abused by other shepherds. And he makes sure that they're okay. Well, that happens to be Yitro. The Midianites are the descendants of Keturah, which is the wife of Abraham. He left the sons of Ham, and he went to the sons of Seth through Abraham. And there, Yitro was obviously worshiping correctly. Because for 40 years, he was in Egypt, and for 40 years, he was with Jethro. And there is a story about Jethro. The Jewish people call him Reuel, the friend of God. Because he brought Moses in, and he gave him a daughter, and they had children. And you know what he names his first child? Behold, I was a foreigner in a foreign land. Well, where's the foreign land? It's not Midian. He's now with his people, the sons of Seth, again. And he's learning the ways again. I guarantee you that Moses did not stand before Pharaoh and worship just like Pharaoh. Guarantee it. But now he's here with the high priest of Midian, a follower of the Most High God. And he's learning the ways. He's preparing to go back and lead the people. God has directed his steps in every way. Just like Joseph, he was given to the Midianites to become a servant so that he could prepare to become the leader. Same story. This is where he finds the burning bush. Now, why was he at the top of a mountain? Probably because Jethro worshipped at the top of that mountain, too. But now he's out shepherding. Well, let's just find the part here. So now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The mountain of God. How is it the mountain of God to Moses unless it was the mountain of God before that? Jethro was offering, I guarantee you, he was offering sacrifices there. Now get this. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. What does everybody tell you? They say, there was a burning bush. No, there wasn't. There was a man in the midst of the burning bush. The angel of the Lord, the human God that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew, was standing right there in the burning bush. There was two, not one. But the two are one. The angel of the Lord appeared in the blazing bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning. So Moses said, I must turn aside now, or I must turn aside and see this marvelous sight. Then the Lord saw that he turned aside to look. God called to him from the midst of the burning bush. Who was in the midst of the burning bush? The angel of the Lord. And what is the God-man? We know what that is. He was here in the beginning. We saw him in Job. We've seen him in Genesis. Now we see him in Exodus. He's right there. So, then he said, do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy. He also said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Am I telling lies? There was a man in the bush who said, I am the same one who met your fathers. He's being restored. Moses was a murderer. Is the law hard? Is God horribly evil in these documents? Or is this a document also of grace and restoration? Because that's what it is. He's being restored. The Lord said, I have surely seen the afflictions of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of the taskmasters. I am aware. For I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land for a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzite. Okay, let's rewind a little bit. When we started Genesis, I said this is not a scientific document. It's not. And here's the fact. This is the reason why. Genesis was given to the people after this moment. Okay? This is after Genesis. Now, it's not after Genesis in time, because Genesis is a creation account. But this is the story that was probably taught to Moses by Jethro, which was given to him through his ancestors, whose wife Keturah learned it from Abraham. Right? This is the story from Shinar, from Sumer. And they received that story to be reprogrammed from the Egyptian way of life because their promise was not to be there. Their promise was to go to the land of Canaan, which would be theirs. They actually have the cave of Machpelah is Abraham's land. That was the first sliver where his stamp was placed forever. That's where he made his mark. And that's where their descendants were. And Canaan became their land. He bought it fair and square. So now it's time for them to go back. These books are all about Israel, the Hebrews, becoming the nation of Israel to go forward to the land. That's the only reason these books exist. It's not a scientific document. It's competing worldviews in a world where God's competed for land. The land of Egypt was ruled by Apis and Ra. That was their land. The land of the Canaanites at this point, if we got anything from Ishmael and from Esau, Esau's descendants became kings. There were kings in Abraham's line long before Israel ever had a king because Esau, the Edomites, had kings. And you know what their names started to start with? Baal, right? They were the Ugaritic people. And were they mighty? Oh, yes, they were. They were the warrior nations. They lived in cliffs and highly fortified places. Nobody could overcome the Edomites until a little bit from now. Because God wasn't done with them yet. They were still Abraham's descendants. Okay, burning bush. So the mission of Moses. So Moses gets this thing. He asks his name. We receive the divine name. Jewish people are afraid to say the divine name. But what does it mean? It's a philosophical name. I am that I am. You can write it down and think it's simple, but it's not. That is not simple. That is a world of information in 2 statements. I am that I am. No person should ever say such a thing about themselves. We are not that was and is to come. We are not self-existent. We are not eternally existent. We are not all-knowing. We don't understand. That name means more than the human mind could ever grasp. We could write thousands of pages on that same statement and never exhaust what it actually means. It is a very philosophical statement. I am that I am. Existing, real, superseding. The one who was, is to come. Every name in this Bible, and there's hundreds of them, it's tied up in one thing. I am that I am. That's what he got. He didn't need to go to Israel and say he's a bull god. He had to go to Israel and say he's the one with no image. He's the one who appears as a man in fire and it doesn't burn. He's the one who appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is that he is. That's what he was supposed to say. I mean, you can sit around a campfire and talk about that for years. It's really weird. But that's what he said. Now, Moses is given a staff, and the staff becomes a serpent. You hear the seed war? He becomes the master of the serpent, right? It's all there. Now, is this magic? Yes, it is. For the viewer, for anybody who's listening, and you're offended and you think this is magic, you're right, it's magic. I got nothing to say about it. But I do know this. The ancient world needed this sign. Today, he might give us an iPhone 35 instead of an iPhone 16 to show off the iPhone. I don't know. Maybe it's some greater technology. I don't know. We're going to find out what the signs of God are soon enough, so be patient. What we do know is that the world needed this at this time to set Israel free. And the seed war was in full ravaging effect. The serpent could be laid down and picked back up. He became the master of the serpent. Yes, it's magic. I don't know what to tell you. That's the way the world was. He did not want to be the only version that would go before Pharaoh. He was insecure. As great as Moses was, he was insecure. Is God so hard and nasty? Not really. He's like, man, I'll work with you. I'll give you Aaron. Right? So, was Moses for 40 years just totally disconnected from the Hebrew people? No, he had his family there still. They knew him. They knew what was going on. When it finally gets to the point that it's time for Moses and Aaron to head that way, they convened, the elders all get together. They knew what was going on. They had rejected him once, but they won't reject him twice. Jesus was rejected once. Joseph was rejected once, but they didn't reject Joseph twice. Moses was rejected once, but they didn't reject him twice. Guess who won't be rejected twice? The story's here. So he's given a mouthpiece, and that's Aaron. Now, there's one other thing here, and for some reason it's not standing out to me right now. But I do want to talk about it a little bit. And when they were on their way, there we go. Now Moses departed and returned to Jethro's father-in-law and said to him, please let me go. And the Lord said to Moses to Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life as dead. So, who was seeking his life? There's only one Pharaoh that had more than a 40-year reign. And it was Thutmose the first. His son, Thutmose the second, or the first actually, the second, he didn't know him. So now he could go back, right? He was married to Hatshepsut. So when Moses shows back up, it's kind of like, whoa, right? Now, Thutmose died pretty quick, and then Amenhotep, he's probably the Pharaoh that was the Exodus Pharaoh. This one, Thutmose the second, he died pretty quick. All right, so let me find this here, because son of blood or whatever it is. But you have refused to let him go. I might have passed over it, but let me just get to the point of it. So the Midianites probably didn't practice circumcision, okay? And so his wife and he are on the way, and Moses gets sick and he's about to die, and so she circumcises the boy. And then she calls him, you are truly a bride of blood to me. And there was something unhealthy there. I don't know how to explain it any other way than that. But probably the Midianites, because of Keturah and because of the divide in the family. Now there's hot blood there. Moses sent away the sons and Keturah before Isaac was set forth, right, in his land. So Avram did not favor Keturah. So when they went down to become this, it's more than likely that they just didn't practice circumcision. And that's why this happened. Because they had to come to obedience to the covenant, right? And so that's probably what happened there, just FYI. People read it and they wonder why. So they go, and he says, let my people go. When you go back to Egypt, see that you perform in front of Pharaoh all these wonders, Israel. Thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. Now, it's important also to note that when God gave the revelation to Moses, he gave him that revelation that he would go back to Mount Horeb to offer the sacrifices. He couldn't just go out into the wilderness in Egypt. He had to go all the way. It's a 3-day journey back to Mount Horeb. And that's a problem. Well, he knew Pharaoh. Right? Pharaoh was not going to allow that. This whole thing was planned out and had to play out. So it gets super hard for the people. And then there are plagues. So let's go through the plagues. I don't really want to read too much of this anymore. I want to go through these plagues here. So Egypt had a number of gods, okay? They had the god of the Nile and the inundation. It brought fertility. This was Hapi, Khnum, Osiris. Hapi was the god of the Nile. The Khnum was a ram-headed god believed to guard the Nile. And Osiris was the god of the afterlife, fertility, and resurrection. The Nile was seen as bloodstream. The god of the afterlife was the one who was receiving the Hebrew children. The god of the dead. Tell me that's not a sacrifice. Heket, the frog-headed goddess, symbolizing fertility and childbirth. Geb, the earth god, depicted as lying beneath the sky. The goddess Nut, fertile soil, earthquakes, etc. Kepri, or Uchit, a scarab-headed sun god representing sunrise, birth, and transformation. His name means to become. Uchit, a cobra, or a flying goddess of protection, the snake. And it was all about the river. Apis, Hathor, Menvis. Apis, this is the one that we should remember. A sacred bull worshipped in Memphis, which was the capital of Egypt at this time. Regarded as the earthly manifestation of Ta. Apis bulls were chosen by markings and kept in luxury. The earthly manifestation of Ta is the creator God. Okay? So the creator God is associated with a bull. Hathor, a cow-headed goddess of motherhood, love and joy. She was worshipped widely. Menivis, a solar bull sacred to Heliopolis, considered an embodiment of Ra. Like Apis, Minerva's bulls were selected. These are also power. The bulls are associated with God's power and creation. Sekhmet, a lion-headed goddess of war and plague, but also healing. Imhotep, originally a human advisor of Pharaoh, Djoser, later deified as a god of medicine and wisdom, the one who can heal. Nut, the sky god, depicted as a star-covered woman arching over air. She swallowed the sun every night and birthed it every morning. Seth, the god of storm and chaos and violence. Osiris, beyond the afterlife, Osiris was symbolized as vegetation and renewal. You go down, you come back up. They believed in reincarnation. Seth, chaos through locusts. Neper, the grain god, often merged with Osiris. Ra, supreme solar deity, creator and ruler of the cosmos. Horus, a falcon-headed sky god, protector of kingship. Pharaoh was called the living Horus. The god on earth was guarded by the birds of heaven. Does that sound like the stories are adapted a bit? Pharaoh, not just ruler, but divine son of Ra. The sons of God, anybody? Sounds familiar. Little bit like Nephilim. Min, god of fertility, reproduction, and male potency, depicted with a phallic with a flail. He was worshipped in harvest festivals. Now, the first sign is blood to water. All the water was in the Nile turned to blood. The fish in the Nile died, the Nile stank. Hapi, Kum, Osiris. The impact, their sacred river, became undrinkable, death-bearing. Go back to creation. The waters of the deep were tovu vavohu, wild, without form. They couldn't support life. God made them sweet. This is the God of creation. He took the water and made it tovu vavohu. It's decreation. That's why this is the second decreation event. The frogs. So Aaron stretched out his hand, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. Heket. That's the god, fertility and all that stuff, right? Frogs, once symbolized fertility, became a curse when multiplied exceedingly. No longer fertile. Be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth. What is he taking away? Gnats, lice. All the dust of the earth became gnats through all the land of Egypt. The earth god, the very dust from which you made, has rebelled against you. The God of creation is decreating. Flies. And there came great swarms of flies into the house of Pharaoh and his servants. Kepri, the scarab-headed god, Uchit, Wajit. The impact, Insects that symbolized renewal or protection became destructive swarms, overturning their sacred associations. What do insects do for gardens and things? They can either destroy it or they can take care of it, right? They have to be managed. But they also bring, they renew the ground and stuff, right? But not now. Now they become a swarm and a problem for you. The ground will give you fruit, but not anymore. Flies, and there came swarms of flies into the house. Never mind, that was the same one. Livestock. All the livestock of Egypt died, but not one of the livestock of Israel died. Peace, the power of God, the sacred bull, he didn't make it. Cattle, sacred to Egypt's cults, perished because God is in control. I give you the animals to eat, not anymore. Recreating. Now, theological considerations. This hurts my mind a little bit because I know there's a lot of people out there that say, God would never, ever take me through the great tribulation. He would not pour his wrath out on me. Therefore, I must be taken up beforehand. Why do we have Exodus if we're going to believe something silly like that? If God gave us the image of his pouring out his wrath and they were there and they didn't experience it, then why should we imagine that we would be taken up before it's poured out? How many people are going to fall away on that day? Because people pretend they know something, but they frankly refuse to believe the Bible. If Exodus is true, they are liars. I can see it. It's going to happen. So many people are going to fall away because of that it's a false doctrine. God will protect his. He will pour out his wrath on those who are destined for wrath, and you could stand right next to him, and it wouldn't affect you. Because that's who God is. Because when he loves you, you are okay. And he's not against you. But you can't imagine that you'll never see it. Because they did. That's what Exodus teaches us. That's why this is immortalized forever in history as a feast. So we can remember that when the days go bad, God is with us. And here we are turning away from it like we're going to be pulled up in a way. How many people are going to be destroyed because of that? That one hurts me. Moses threw it toward heaven and it became boils breaking out in sores. What was that? The dust of the earth again. He threw it up into the air, and everybody became affected with boils. Their great healer could not save them. Their gods could not save them because the God of creation was decreating for a people who called themselves gods. We are not gods, and we are to never claim such a thing. And God showed us that. The Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire rained down from the earth. The hail struck down everything that was in the field. God affected, it was Nut, Seth, and agriculture, the sky goddess, the storm god, the agriculture. Egypt's weather deities failed to shield the people and the crops. Because God is the God of all. We were never supposed to worship the created. We are in his image. We are greater than the earth. And the earth is our spaceship. It's nothing more than a place where we get to be for a time. There's nothing deified about this place. It's destined for destruction. He covered the whole face of the land in darkness. Seth, chaos. Nepir, the grain god. Osiris, fertility. Ra, the sun god, power. What was affected? Everything they knew. And God said, "Let there be light." And then he said, "There will be no light." Here we are. The God of creation has control. There was pitch darkness. The sun itself, Egypt's greatest deity, was blotted out. Next, the death of the firstborn. And you know who died as a baby, still had his baby teeth, Weben Sinew, the son of Amenhotep. And that's why he tried to blot out Hatshepsut. Because she brought Moses from the water, and the prophecy came true, and Weben Sinew died. Amenhotep's corpse, his mummified remains, had scars from boils. And the death of the firstborn. What a sad state of affairs that we would even have to get to that point. So, is this an evil God? That's the question. So many people would read this, they would see this, they would tell this story, and they would say, well, he killed the firstborn. How could he do such a thing? Did the God-man give him a choice? Were they fair to people? Were they going to produce a kingdom that would bring righteousness to the earth? Was there anything good going to come from this for the generations to come? No, it was death and murder. It was disgusting. It was the divine river, the divine sun. It was a people who were going to continue to languish and destroy. It was a people who were willing to destroy foreigners for no reason. It was a people who were trying to kill babies and give them to the God of death. Is it not justified to destroy evil? This is not a book that teaches us hatred. It's a book that teaches us that righteousness wins. And it wasn't the people that did it. Righteousness is not in the hand of a man hacking heads off. It's in the form of the God who knows the future and is bringing a people out to bring the one who would be the sacrificial lamb. There is a future where there's no more war, and this is part of bringing that about. Is this God's character? No. Does God have to destroy evil? Yes. But he doesn't want to. We made that choice when we decided that disobedience was better than obedience. We made that choice when we decided that our lives would be lived to serve ourselves. And should he have just destroyed just the firstborn? No, he should have destroyed every single life on this earth. Because every single life on this earth is cursed to destroy and kill and be greedy and evil. We're still doing it to this day. This is a good God. Good men fight and destroy bad men. We love movies like that, but we want to condemn God. He is who he is deserving of our judgment. I wouldn't want to be that person. Now the Lord said to Moses, one more plague I will bring upon the people. The Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and then made Moses himself greatly esteemed in the land of Egypt, both in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. About midnight I'm going to pass in the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of the Pharaoh who sits on the throne, even to the firstborn of the slave girl who sits behind the millstone, all the firstborn of the cattle as well. Moreover, there shall be a great cry in the land, such as never been before. But against any of the sons of Israel, a dog will not even bark. Whether against a man or beast, that you may understand that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt, the world, and his people. Unbelievable that we have that theology. All these your servants will come down to me and bow themselves before me, saying, go out, and all the people will follow you. And after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Here is the Passover lamb. Your lamb shall be an unblemished male, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall not keep it, or you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. What did you have to do with the lamb? You had to take the lamb into your house for 14 days and take care of it and brush it and care for it and make sure that it was perfect and feed it and love it. You had to become acquainted with this thing. Jesus was in their midst. This lamb was in their midst. That's what this is. You had to learn to love it. You had to know it. It was from yours. You shall slaughter it, and you shall kill it at twilight. Moreover, they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the house. Why the blood? Because the life is in the blood. Life is in the blood. So when the blood is poured out, the life is poured out. What died? The innocent. What was taken from Pharaoh and the people? The innocent. Is God evil for this? No, he saved them from becoming like them. He brought them into the kingdom to come. These were innocent. The lamb was innocent. It's innocence that gives life. But it's not the people who are innocent. It's God who's showing us that the innocent one is coming and that his blood should be placed on your life, on your doorposts. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled or with water, but rather roasted with fire. What is the end? Fire. When the earth is done, when the meter is up, when God's judgment is here, when it's finally over and there's a new heaven and a new earth, fire. It's roasted with fire. They shall eat of the flesh that same night, roasted with fire, and they shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw, boiled, but with fire. You shall not leave any of it until the morning, but whatever is left is until the morning shall burn with fire. What happened to Jesus? In the evening, he was put into the grave. He was not left on the cross until the morning because it was Passover. It's unbelievable. For I will go through the lands of Egypt on the night, and I'll strike down the firstborn of the land. Now this day will be a memorial to you, and you shall celebrate it as a feast of the Lord throughout your generations. You are to celebrate it as a permanent ordinance. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, but on the first day you shall remove leaven from your house, for whoever eats of it on the first day until the seventh day, that person shall be cut off. On the first day you shall have a holy assembly. On the seventh day no work can be done, except what must be eaten by every person. That alone could be prepared for you. You shall also observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your hosts out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generation as a permanent ordinance. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. It's two feasts, but it become one feast, Passover. 7 days there shall be no leavened bread in your house. Then Moses called the elders of Israel and said to them, Go and take yourselves lambs. For the Lord will pass through and smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the doorposts, the Lord will pass over. And you shall observe this event as an ordinance for you and your children forever. Then you enter the land which the Lord has given you. He has promised you, you shall observe this rite. This is all about taking the land. Haaretz. In the beginning, God created land and he placed men on it. Now you will go, my men, and take the land. He's recreating a people. The Egyptians urged the people to send them out. Everybody died. This happened. And they were to send them out. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and said, All the firstborn are mine. Firstborn, they're mine. What was he teaching them? Did all those firstborn, did they go to hell that day? Are they forever condemned? Right? He's not a bad God, man. They were taken from an evil people into the kingdom to come. They were innocent. He took the innocent. And then he told them, I want your firstborn are mine. I redeemed them. Your firstborn are mine. Why? Seeking for people, for us to understand that our children, our firstborn children, our treasures are a treasure to God because He's going to give us the firstborn. He's setting the stage. So then God leads His people. Now the Pharaoh had to let the people go, but he didn't lead them by the way of the land to the Philistines, even though it was near. God said the people should go to the water. So they took the bones of Joseph, and by a pillar they went, but Pharaoh came in pursuit. But he didn't last long, because the one who can make the chaotic waters become sweet took the chaotic waters and opened them up, and the people passed through on dry ground. What are we? We are dry ground creatures. What did God's people do? They went on the dry ground because God created dry land. The God of creation is recreating. Then when the evil ones pass through, not so dry. And then there was a song. I will sing to the Lord, for He is highly exalted. The horse and its riders He's hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and He's become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise Him. My father's gods, and I will extol Him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is His name. And who comes riding on a horse to conquer? The warrior Lord. They rejected Moses the first time and sent him to the Gentiles. But when he came back, they found the warrior God, didn't they? The stage is being set. The enemy said, I will pursue and overtake, and I will devoid the spoil. You should read the whole song, is amazing. The place, O Lord, which you have made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, which your hands have established, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. It's already looking forward to this is about the tabernacle. This is about right? Everything looks forward. And the more you read this, you see it goes back and forward. It goes back and forward. Every story does the same thing. Then Moses led Israel to the Red Sea, and they went and they turned to the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Then they came to Marah. They could not drink the waters of Marah because they were bitter. Therefore it was named Marah 3 times. How bad was it? Death. They were on their way to death. They had 3 days and 3 bitters. Then they cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. And he threw it in the waters, and the waters became sweet. He recreated. There he made for them a statute and regulations. There he tested them, and he said, if you will give earnest heed to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which you saw on the Egyptians, for I, the Lord, am your healer. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there. So he put them through a series of tests, and they didn't do so well. And then he showed them, I'm still the God of creation. It's not about branches in the water, right? It's a sign. It's the magic of the people's minds. But it's the God working. But then they led him to the place with springs and with food. And there they camped for a while. And this is where today ends. So what we found is that, first of all, these stories are not unknown, right? They're not unknowable. It's not nonsensical. We go to the next slide there, Nick, for me? It's not nonsensical. So what parallels do we see between Israel's deliverance and in our own experiences with God's rescue? Didn't we all have to be recreated? Didn't we all have to be taken out of the world? Didn't the evil have to die? It's all the same story. So how did the Passover shape Jewish identity? Well, the Passover is Jewish identity. And it's anybody's identity that would identify with it. And how does the cross shape Christian identity? in the same way. It's the same thing. When the blood is applied, forgiveness and overlooking of sins, death flies over you. That's what it is. So what powers does God still confront in our world today? Every single one of these deities. Every single one of these beliefs. There are men who call themselves the ones worthy of controlling the masses. And they've done nothing but create chaos. We see them working all over the world doing the same things. And the Bible tells us that soon they're going to attempt to control, subdue, and destroy God's people. But guess what's going to happen? Not the ones who believe that they're going to be raptured out. They're probably going to fall away. But the ones who are prepared to trust God through that time of trial and tribulation, they're going to find God's power is true. And that he sets them apart. And that while everybody else heads for eternal fire and for the burning and for the lack of recreation, for decreation, God's people are safe and good. Because God is supplying. Just like we saw in the Exodus. Ready to roll? Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been an interesting night. Exodus is a great book. We've got 3 more weeks as we continue on. If you'd like to reach out to us, please feel free, modernmindAncientBook@gmail.com. I got my partner up here. I had to kick her out a little bit. And thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for being here. And may the Lord bless you, keep you, make his face shine upon you, turn his face towards you, and bring you peace. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.